this last session provides one of the better opportunities for students looking for internships. So certainly hope we can impart that knowledge. Y'all get some questions together for the panel. Don't be afraid to ask. We've got a PhD student in Connor here. We've got Anne-Marie coming up who works with a division of Sony Sports. And then we've got Shuler Cotton, who's an employee of the university working in analytics. So we've got a lot of knowledge here on the stage. If they're ready, I'm going to let them go ahead and start introducing themselves. I do want to say I learned a bit by prepping for this panel. There's two things we're going to talk about today, analytics and sports technology, but also we're going to talk about their application and the product side. So we're going to do a brief introduction, y'all, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Hey, everyone. My name is Connor Moore. I'm a PhD candidate in bioengineering at Clemson. I defend my dissertation on Monday, so I'm very close to finishing that degree. I started as a math major at Charleston Southern. I played golf there and then did my master's in biomedical data science, and now I'm finishing my PhD. My interests have always been in the intersection of data science and human performance, and my work here has largely been with the baseball team, looking at ways to keep pitchers healthy and use data to do that. So happy to be here and looking forward to this.
My name's Marie Severyn. I graduated here in 2022 with my PhD in bioengineering. I had a background in mechanical engineering and really decided that I wanted to kind of marry my love for science and sports. And so I found Dr. Desjardins, kind of stalked him down, told him I wanted to go to grad school here. And it was one of the best things that happened. It really, it's a very rapid growing industry, I think, sports analytics, sports tech in general. And so I'm very passionate about this industry. I love it. And since then I've had two little boys that if you see them moseying in here, you hear little voices from the back. They'll be here any minute. But we have two boys, and I've brainwashed my 3-year-old into being a Tiger fan. So he runs around the house yelling, "Go Tigers," all the time. So yeah, grateful to be here. If anyone has any questions, definitely let's talk further about it afterwards or, during the Q&A.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shuler Cotton. I do not have a PhD. I have a Bachelor of Science, but graduated from Clemson in 2018. Was fortunate enough to work with the football team during my time here, as well as the baseball team. And really that's what kind of got my brain going that, hey, maybe I could actually do this for my career. And so ended up working in the NFL for the Buffalo Bills, the 2018 through 2021 seasons, then left to go work for my uncle, a fintech startup. And then finally in 2022, decided to come back to Clemson, had an opportunity to work for Matt Cobb, who I had worked for when I was a student in an internship role. And since then, I've served as both the Director of Analytics and Business Strategy, and now currently serve as the Assistant AD for Enterprise Systems and Analytics at Clemson Athletics. I live in Pendleton, South Carolina with my wife, Emily Elizabeth, who's also a Clemson University graduate.
All right. Thanks, y'all, for being here. I apologize if I rushed to get started. I've been excited about this thing all day. They educated me so much in the prep work for this, and we've got a lot of content to cover. And so I was just excited to get started. So thanks for hanging in there. And I'm sorry if I rushed you into this. It is a broad topic, but we decided as a panel, we would stick to the theme of sports. We'd try to touch on both college and pro. So the first kind of question is, what's the current role of analytics and sports technology? And we probably need to define both of those for the audience. And then how are they being used both as to help athletes with their health and wellness, but also with their performance optimization? So whoever wants to go first, have at it.
Maybe defer to y'all first on the product and tech side, and then I'll take it from the club side.
I can jump into it. So yeah, there's a little bit of a difference between applying the data and then the products that you're using to collect the data or to enhance the fan engagement in the sport, right? And so I think Connor can speak really well on the analytics side, so I'll let him do that. But the sports tech industry can really be very vast. There's the broadcast side using AI, really in all facets. AI is we've talked about it multiple times already today, kind of like the next big step, right? But using AI from a broadcast perspective, from a performance perspective on tracking the players, for performance enhancement, for fan engagement, like MLB StatsCast, you can go look at all the data from the game. So there's a fan aspect and an athlete aspect in the sports tech world. I'll let you speak on the athlete side.
Yeah, I mean, Anne-Marie said it very well. There's a lot of technology out there. It's able to track anything from how a ball is moving to how a human is moving. We've got wearables that track our physiology throughout the day. And everywhere throughout college and pro sports is starting to function more like a front office where decisions have to be made about which athletes to use, whether during a game, which athletes to pick during going into a season. And everything there is driven on how do we make those athletes better? How do we help them improve at what they do? And so sports analytics really fits into that well because you can use that data, you can use data science to then get insights into how do you make athletes perform better? How do you keep them healthy? And that's really the role of what we do. Anne-Marie works more on the technology side of it, and Shuler and I work more on, the data science side and how we make those insights into reality.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think taking the data that gets collected from those systems, whether it's wearable technology, other types of systems, being able to collate all of that into a single system and overarching strategy, and you got to figure out what you're trying to optimize. You're going to be optimizing different things at the pro level versus the collegiate level. But to Connor's point, collegiate is starting to become more and more like pro. You're always searching for a competitive advantage. And, when you're doing so, you need to work within parameters. And I feel like you have more of those parameters in professional sports. Like there's a salary cap and there's, certain things that make it maybe a little bit more easier to find the efficiencies than say on the collegiate side, at least currently, just because of the ever-changing nature of player evaluation and athlete compensation and those types of things. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, whether it's pro or college. And you are solving for similar problems, and you also need to develop a similar skill set, and you can apply that in both arenas.
And this is a little bit of personal opinion, but whether I'm a computer guy, an analytics guy, gal, maybe I'm an engineer, I'm more on the tech side, and I'm looking for my summer internship or my career path. Should I be particular about college or pro, or is it just what does it matter if I take that opportunity, get one? Should I take it? Any tips?
I probably shouldn't say this because it's a sports entrepreneurship symposium, but it doesn't even have to be in sports, right? Like understanding what are the skills that you need to develop from a technical standpoint, and then also understanding the theory that goes into the economics and the statistical methods can be applied in all sorts of industries. So to step back from that, for me, I don't think it matters too much, college or pro, but I'd love to hear y'all's insights as well.
I think that's a really good point. I would encourage any experience that you can get. I also think this is a shameless plug for Clemson, but there's internships here in athletics and with sports that would be great opportunities for you to grow your skill set, get experience, work with others in this space, and also work with the staffs who are actively involved in this. I think professional environments are great for your development, though. They're very competitive, but if you can get in and work with those who have multiple years of experience and have built out those research and development departments, then you're going to grow your skills and come back, whether it's to a college environment or go on to a full-time job and be even better at what you do. So there's no wrong answer, but I think that's a really solid path that you could take.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that. I think, like they both said, no experience is going to be bad experience. I would personally lean a little bit more towards college from a logistics standpoint, because a lot of internships with professional teams are going to be based on their season, and their seasons tend to go longer than a semester or a summer. Like baseball season is April through October potentially. So that's a little, I think it's tougher just with your schedule as a student, unless you're able to do it while you're also in school. The other advantage to being in a college internship is a lot of the times you're building stuff from the ground up. Whereas on a professional team, they might already have a lot of their systems, algorithms, pipelines, things built out, and you might just be doing busy work for them. Whereas I'm sure Connor can speak to this. Shuler, you might be able to speak to, like, you get to build out and kind of start from the ground up and get, I think, more hands-on experience in a college setting.
And I don't want to deter people from sports, right? We do also offer internships in our department. And to your point, in terms of seasonal structure, we try to structure that in such a way where it's following more of the semester schedule as opposed to a full season schedule. Whether it's a baseball team, where it's over the summer, that type of thing. So yeah.
Tough. So see some students that have just kind of come in. Thanks for making it here. Before I started working with y'all, when I heard analytics, it was just data. That's what it meant to me. But maybe we can take a minute to talk just a little bit more about sports tech. What are some of the products being used in sports today, both college and pro? What data are they collecting? Like, what's the purpose of that device, whether it's a wearable or a radar gun or whatever it may be? And then we'll talk a minute after that about what products you think are going to hit the market in the next couple of years. So we'll start with the basics of what the products are and what they're collecting.
I think I'll kick this one off. So I think the big difference, I'm going to speak on the difference between like professional sports and collegiate or maybe high school amateur sports, because they're really large difference in markets. Obviously, professional sports have a lot more money to throw around with this stuff. So a lot of the products at that level are business to business type products. So it's companies going and making deals with the MLB, with the NBA, and then they implement those products across the entire organization. So it's less of a household name at that point. And some of it's in broadcast as well. You're watching an NBA game and they go and show the cylinder above the basketball hoop. Like, that's a company out there using AI to go and show that replay. Hawkeye, my company that I work with, taking over a little bit of the chain gang's job and, using their technology, their AI technology to mark where the ball is on the field, see if it's a first down, right? All of that stuff, it's not really a household name, something that you'd use as a consumer, but it's something that you're seeing. And so I think that's the direction from the professional sport, is things are going more broadcast, more fan engagement, more AI usage. There's a performance side as well, but again, that's usually business to business deals that, again, you're not using on the consumer front. Whereas there's a lot of companies on the college and amateur level that you actually get to use in a college setting. Like here at Clemson, I got to use a lot of those products, but I'll let these guys speak on those as well.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of those technologies. I've not been on the development side, but I think that's where things get interesting, is that you've got these different streams of data and you're looking at how you can integrate them all into a system that helps athletes get better and help them stay healthy throughout the year. So with baseball, we work with ball tracking technology. It tracks everything about a pitch or about the ball throughout its flight, from when it's pitched by the pitcher, hit by the hitter, and even some technologies track fielding plays as well. And then there's also motion capture. That's what Anne Marie is referring to, and a lot of her work is focused on. And so a lot of my research has used both of those. But then other sports have position tracking technology. You'll see that in basketball arenas, where they track where all the players are on the court at any given time. And you can, again, see how all of this can feed into, we can look at the intensity of movement that has health implications, but that we can also look at spacing of players, and that has implications for strategy as well. So lots of different data sources. I think Shuler has more experience too with ingesting all of that data and working with it, but lots of opportunities for analytics projects and all the work that we do.
Yeah, the bioengineers have been very good at generating the data, and then that's when I have to come in and figure out where we're going to store it all. You mentioned data. Like, I mean, it's just been an explosion, exponential growth across all industries, not just sports. How do we cut through the noise and get to the signal? We have to have a platform that can ingest all that information, to Connor's point, and store it all. But then, figure out strategies, build a team, use the right tools in order to tell a story that actually has an impact, or leverage that information to, create efficiencies for those coaching staffs, for those scouting staffs, because that's the last thing that they want to do, is be drowning in data.
Yeah, there was some great dialogue last night at the dinner and who owns this data, and it's fascinating. So for folks in the office that's kind of your lean, speak to this crowd afterwards because it is an opportunity. I think to Shuler's point, what in the world do we do with all this stuff? Getting back to the sports tech products a minute, can anybody maybe drop a few nuggets of what they might see coming down the pipeline and maybe an opportunity for some of the students as they're 2 or 3 years out, looking out?
I think, like we've spoken about AI already. I think the world's kind of your oyster when it comes to AI right now in sports technology. You could come up with a lot of products using that. There's a lot of startups in the industry right now. A lot of push for, like, I think I don't think I mentioned it very well in the intro, but my smaller company got bought out by Hawkeye, which is owned by the larger Sony sports conglomerate, Sony conglomerate. And so there's companies like that that are putting a lot of money into growing into the sports industry. And so I do think AI is at the forefront of that. I think under that Sony Sports branch umbrella, they do the animations with the football games. So if you watch the Simpson players or the Disney players, I can't remember exactly what it was, play football, that's like under the Sony Sports umbrella. So you could come up with anything. I mean, who would have thought that would be, what's enticing people to watch football with their kids? So I think you could come up with anything, really. Like, it sounds so silly and cliche to say, but I think it's a wide open market.
Yeah, I think, computer vision and within AI is definitely something that's making waves. Computer vision allows us to track, objects as if they were images and videos. That's how we do a lot of the biomechanics modeling that we do. I think there's lots of opportunities there just for understanding the body as it moves, its health, and in doing that in real time too. Those are some good applications. I do think a lot will come out in broadcasts too. I'm not as well versed in that space, but I mean, you see it come out when you watch sports now and the creative ways that they're using data in real time to give the audience insight into how performance is unfolding in real time. And then I also think there are some creative ways that we can leverage existing technology too. When we talk to a lot of people in the sports science space, they say there's been a technology boom, and all of these organizations have lots of tech that they're using day to day, and there's not really an optimal way to use it yet. So introducing more technology is almost making it more difficult to do your job as a sports scientist well. And so instead, if we look for ways to creatively leverage that and get insights into what we are interested in tracking, and as Shuler talked about, what is our strategy as an organization, we can do better. And my advisor works on remote health monitoring and using what's the least invasive way that we can monitor the most about the human body and use that for health insights. And I think that's very useful too, because technology, when it's less invasive and easier to use, that's how it explodes in the industry. And that's why wearables are super popular too. So it may not be new technology, it may be new uses of existing technology, but again, once you have this skill set, you're well equipped to contribute to that space.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. You mentioned so many different opportunities, and you talked about a certain sector, computer vision. I think it's important to know, to try to learn, educate yourself, and understand, when we say artificial intelligence, what does that actually mean? Computer vision is an aspect. Large language models are an aspect. You would know that by Claude or ChatGPT. Deep learning, across video or images. So understanding the underlying, categories that fall under the AI umbrella, you can educate yourself on that. That's going to allow you to begin to understand how to use those specific tools, not just AI as a buzzword, in order to go out and solve problems.
I did want to add, someone earlier spoke on the knowing what the need is. And so I think looking at the market and what the need is, I think there's a big push on fan engagement, even more and more. People have access to watch games on their phones, on their TVs. they might not go to games as much. And so how can we utilize computer vision, AI to enhance fan engagement, enhance, maybe improve fan betting? How can we use all this data we're collecting to continue to go down that like micro betting market that's getting really hot right now as well?
Okay, so we've got a room full of students that hung out with us here on a Friday afternoon before a football weekend. So let's get real specific to helping them out a little bit. One of the common themes I've heard through this whole event is get your foot in the door, get your foot in the door. And y'all talked about it during our prep call. What types of careers are available in analytics or sports tech? And then how can they start looking for internships and things like that?
I'll share it first and just tell a little bit of my story too. It might be helpful. There's lots of ways that you can get in, but I mean, it is the most important thing is get your foot in the door. The first thing I'll say is there's a lot of publicly available data. I think that's one of the coolest things about sports is Marie mentioned StatCast. That's all the pitch tracking data from the MLB going back to 2008. And there's a lot of data that you can work with. That if you're interested in analytics and you want to learn coding, that's a cool way to apply it. There's other sports as well. You can quickly tailor it to your interests. I think that's the best way to get involved. It's best if you have a project that you can showcase and a portfolio that you can demonstrate the work that you've done to others. I think university opportunities are a great way to do that as well. We've worked at Clemson to build up internship programs. Shuler has his as well. That's how I got my foot in the door, is working with our sports science internship and really taking that and building it into something that fit my research as a graduate student, but also built opportunities for other students as well. And that's really the goal of that environment, is to help students get their foot in the door, because it's a really hard space to get into. And I always thought that there wasn't a way to get into it, just knowing how competitive it was. And even having played sports, didn't really see a way to marry that up with my career. And it's been really cool to see that come to fruition. And I think once you get in the door with a university and you can network and people can help you get into that space, then it is a tight-knit industry and people know other people everywhere and will help you set up and be launched forward in your career. So it can look like R&D, it can look like developing technology, it can look like scouting, sports medicine. There is a big space, but just look for the right way to apply your skills in those areas, and other people will take you forward too.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about the athletic industry, sports industry in general, is people jump around a lot. So when you say it's a tight-knit industry, it is in the fact that, you might work for this team 1 year, and then in 2 years you're going and working for another team across the country, and then 2 years later you're moving up and you're working for another team. So people are very tight-knit and they're all over the country, which is really neat because you grow your network really fast. And so definitely any connection that you make, hang on to that and definitely utilize those connections. I just wanted to add that. The other thing is in the industry, you want to figure out what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy the application? Do you enjoy working with the athletes and the coaches? Because obviously there's jobs with the sports teams and biomechanist jobs and sports science jobs. And, you could go work with any team, any university, and that, if you like the data science side, like these guys can definitely talk more on that, but there's need and jobs in data science. And then there's the product side, like all the tools and equipment that the teams are using to capture this data. There's companies behind that need CFOs, finance people, they need operations people, they need development folks, coder, they need all sorts of people to run a business. So there's a whole business behind those products, where if you want to be involved in the sports industry, but you might not want necessarily to work with a team and kind of have some of the crazier hours and things like that, there are other options in that industry as well.
Yeah, I kind of classify it in 3 ways. First way is making connections, building your network, and I think y'all both definitely talked to that. I started, I mentioned with the Buffalo Bills, actually had a prior connection to the Buffalo Bills, and so was able to sort of reach out to that connection after I graduated from Clemson, and then he set me up in contact with their director of analytics. So it certainly is a factor in terms of who you know and building trust with those people. The second facet is technical skills. Like you have to actually know what you're doing in order to prove value to any organization. And then when we're talking about analytics, it's, can you build models? Can you tell stories with data? Can you find insights from the data? And you have to have technical skills in order to garner that. And then finally, the soft skills. I mentioned that we offer an internship. Our 3 core values are integrity, curiosity, and tenacity. You have to have that across any industry. And, when we're looking for people that are coming to our internship, we need people to be ideal team players. They may not have all the technical skills. They may not have all those connections yet, but can you be humble, hungry, and smart and being willing to work? You do those things, good things are going to happen.
So to kind of follow up on that, we started off the day with a presentation with the new master's program. Then a slide went up that I just couldn't believe. The number of programs at Clemson that have the word sports in it. I know some people weren't there this morning. He basically said he couldn't fit them all up there. So we've got a different career paths here, but what are thoughts on undergraduate and then speeding out into industry versus master's versus PhD? If you'd share a little bit about your journey and maybe what you've seen professionally, because some folks are thinking maybe I want to do a little postgraduate work,
It's really interesting because, if you would ask me a couple of years ago, for instance, Syracuse University has an undergraduate program for sports analytics specifically. And if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I'd say, man, maybe that's a little too early to specialize in that regard. But with, talking of y'all's session about sports as an asset class, you're like, maybe it's not. And so I think it's all the institutions trying to figure out what is the right educational experience, the balance between undergraduate and graduate. And then for us, selfishly with Clemson Athletics, how can we, expand opportunities for students at both of those levels in order to gain that real world experience?
I do think, and I'll let Connor touch on this more. I think there is value in graduate education if you want to be with a sports team, be on the sports science side, biomechanist side. There's a lot. They put a lot of value in graduate education there. I did, I pursued my PhD here, was thinking I wanted to go more the biomechanics route, applied biomechanics. Sorry, Dr. D, I don't really use my research stuff in what I'm doing now, but I enjoy what I'm doing now and I love it. And I wouldn't have gotten where I am without that graduate degree. Do I use it day to day, managing operations for our baseball teams? No. But it does help me in my role because I can bridge the gap between technology and operations and how we report things to upper leadership. And so it's valuable in that regard. I wouldn't say going into certain sides of the industry that you definitely need a graduate degree, but there are aspects of it where it's valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's valuable having being about to finish the last 4 years of this, but I think where it really has its value is the opportunities that it creates. That was the only way I was going to get my foot in the door. If I came out of undergrad and tried to get into sports, I didn't have a clear path, and maybe I would have if that's what was meant for me. But staying in grad school and being able to work with the athletic department here and really build out my skill set that way created a really cool opportunity for me to create a career in this area. And so that would be my push for it. And all that we talked about, college athletic departments potentially operating more like front offices, that's going to create more need for students like you guys to contribute and build your skills and help them work in the way that they need to. So, and if you do that in grad school, you have an easy way to get connected and build your skills and a degree to show for it, because oftentimes you have to do a research project, and that could be a perfect master's thesis or dissertation ultimately that you can then take as a story to tell every time you interview and every time someone reaches out to you about an opportunity. And that's the best way to crush an interview too. So that's my 2 cents on it, but I think it is very worthwhile.
And I also add, you have to have some self-reflection too, and understand how you're wired. For me, just wouldn't last in a PhD program because I'm too interested in doing so many different things. But if you want to be a specialist and have that, very skilled knowledge, that's the route you should take. And I think that's amazing. when it comes to the different roles, right? Business analyst, data engineer, analytics engineer, product manager, there's so many different types of things you can do, but you have to know sort of what those jobs are actually like and understand, your own skill set and how you're wired to, in order to have the most success.
So I think it's about time for questions from the audience. If we've got the mic ready, we'll take some of those. I know it's late, guys, but come on, it's Friday. Let's go.
So I've heard you guys speak on both sides, so mainly on the analytics versus the hardware software side. How, as becoming a founder, like starting a company within this sector, how aligned, do you have to be a specialist in both? Can you focus on the hardware and bring in the analytics elsewhere? How do they relate to each other?
I think it depends on how you would want to set up your company. So the company that I originally worked for, when I joined, it was out of the startup phase, but still very much had a lot of that. They sold their software as their main product. The hardware, they actually didn't upcharge for it. They just bought it off the shelf at the time. And then all the analytics and the data ingestion, that was all left up to the teams. So, and we primarily worked with MLB teams for context. So it kind of depends on how you would want to approach it. There's value in what services can I give to the customers and then charge them for that. So there was another side of our business where we took the data and we created a report visualization tool for them. So that was a great business venture for them as well, because that's something that then the teams don't have to go out and hire additional manpower to create that. They could just buy it from us. So it really depends. I know that that's not a straightforward answer, but I don't think that you as a starter need to be able to do everything. I think you bring in the right people who would know how to do that. You don't need to be a jack of all trades. You just need to know how to bring in the right people that are going to help you with that.
Yeah, and I hope you're able to attend the previous session with the, talking about entrepreneurship and funding through venture capital, because they did a great job talking about product differentiation, what's going to separate you within the market, and understanding, what does separate you. Is it the hardware? Is it the thing that nobody else has developed in a lab, or is it the service? Like the whole as a service thing, right? Data as a service, information as a service, application as a service. Software as a service, is that the thing that differentiates you? So just being true to what you're trying to solve, and having that self-awareness is going to be critical.
And I would add to that as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I took away today, and whether it was Kiki talking about it or so many people talked about the rate of change currently going on in sports. So if you can find a niche and just get in there, because you can't wait for perfection or to round out your product portfolio because it's changing too quickly. And I see Kiki with the mic, so I'm gonna let her take it from here.
Thank you, John. My question is, some of the solutions that we've seen around analytics, they're very specific to a sport. Like it works with baseball or it works with basketball. And I'm curious if with the onset of AI and other things, do we move into a world where there's one solution that can go across multiple sports? Or do you think that sports analytics solutions are going to still be very sports specific because of the field, the angles, everything?
I think that's a great question. From a computer vision standpoint, it's difficult to make things more widely applicable because you're building models specific for that movement. It's more difficult to build something that's applicable to a wide range of athletic movements, as well as, you have a baseball field set up differently than a soccer stadium. So you're going to have different hardware situations set up. So I think that's just from a markerless motion capture perspective, right? And computer vision perspective. I think there are other technologies that do a good job of hitting multiple markets, like Catapult, more wearable devices where you're tracking different biometrics on that athlete individually. So it depends on the product, really.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. I think the common thread, models are almost always going to be sport specific, and that's just the nature of the business. But then what the common threads across sports are still health focused. Like I think what Whoop did creating new biometrics like Whoop age. That's something that, that's meant for the general population, but athletes take interest in too. So I feel like that's where the separating factor is what could have common interest across sports. And typically that's health, injury prevention, metrics that speak to that. There are less performance metrics that a technology could speak to that's universal across all sports.
Yeah, unless the Sam Altmans and the Peter Thiels of the world like can develop, AGI, I only see it moving towards more differentiation than less.
This may be an oddball question, but in regards to the data ownership is always a fight and everything. Is there potential, whether it's a good way or a bad way, that data ownership legal battles become a big disruptor to this industry where, I mean, who knows, 5 years from now, it's like, no, everybody owns their own biometric data and you have to individually or collectively deal with that to then get it and do these products. Is that something you've already seen some, or is there, who knows?
I can kick it off. Yeah, I like to leave that one to the lawyers. It is obviously it is a very hot topic that is, to my knowledge, written in the contracts that we make, but who knows if a higher law was to come down and say something different, that would obviously be quite the mess to deal with at the time. But it is at the forefront of those contracts and discussions when we make those.
Yeah, and it generally is very difficult to work in algorithm development if you don't have access to any of that data. So public data sources are very helpful where they don't reveal any potentially private or information that would, make an athlete vulnerable in that way. But I think that's also the benefit maybe of starting a technology is you do at least have access to that information early on, and you can use it to build out tools and metrics that are beneficial. And otherwise it's very difficult to get that.
Yeah, the world's most common lie. I accepted the terms and conditions. I read them. I think that happens when you're talking about consumer data. But when you talk about athlete data, where do we get to that point in terms of who owns what? We're talking about schools or programs or an entity like MLB or the NFL. What percentage of ownership do they have versus the athletes? Yeah, I think it's only going to continue to come into the open forum.
Yeah, and I think I can speak on this. I don't think it's against my rules, but what's interesting for my company when we sell our products to some of the colleges is we work with them in a way where we get to own their data, and then what we do is then we sell it to the MLB and to the MLB team. So it's actually it's actually great for the college kids as well, because then they're like, oh, we're collecting this data. It's not just for our use and our school's use and our players, but like the MLB can now look at that for scouting reasons. And then as well, when you get an athlete in the major leagues, and then you could go back and look at their data from when they were 18 years old. So there is some of that. Like there is a benefit to selling your life away with your data set. But I don't know. It's an interesting market there.
And particularly like when you're talking about, biometric data or, maybe raw statistics that are accrued on the play of field, you have that primary level, but then also the secondary level of, people like Connor are coming in and building these complex algorithms on top of that. There are, certain metrics, who owns that individual, intellectual property, how was it generated versus, who generated it. So it's interesting.
So coming out of school, whether it's undergrad, grad school, do you think it's more important to have like the soft skills or more of the data and analytics skills? Obviously, you need some. And also, is it more important to have experience in R, Python, or Excel, in your opinion?
I think it's very important to have the soft skills, and anything you can do throughout your time to develop that is going to help set you apart. Shuler was right. You can't really do anything without the technical skill set, but the soft skills set you apart. And I look for ways to emphasize that in your story wherever you can and how you plan to use them. And ultimately, that's what helps you it's what makes you a better team player down the road. As for the technical skill set itself, I think either R or Python, you're not going to go wrong with those. Those are more commonly used in organizations. Usually once you know one, you can learn the other. And if you need to adapt to an organization, that's okay. But I would just learn one, start with that, become really good at it, and just learn the mechanics of coding. And then if you ever need to learn something else on top of that, you can and you will.
I think Shuler said a good comment earlier where take a bit of self-reflection as well. Like for me, technical skills were great, but like I don't thrive in an environment where I'm sitting at a desk coding or testing or doing rigorous engineering related tasks all day. I work better in an environment where I get to work with people and think larger pictures, just strategic thought. So for me, I value those skills a lot, and that's why I've also pursued the role that I have. Whereas if someone else is just like, hey, I'm really good at just sitting down for 4 to 10 hours a day and just coding all day, great, hone into that. Like still work on the other stuff, but definitely hone into that because that's what you should get really good at.
Yeah, there's this concept of like Pareto dominance. Can you have the, let's say on the x-axis, soft skills, y-axis, technical skills. The most, in order to Pareto dominate your peers, you have to be good at both of those things. So you're trying to optimize for those things to say, hey, I may not be as technically gifted as the 3 people beside me, but when you pair those 2 things together with the soft skills that I'm able to bring and the technical knowledge that I do have, that's going to give you an advantage when you're searching for jobs. Oh, and I think you said SQL, right? I think you said SQL. That's what I would recommend.
Y'all, great job. It's been a pleasure working with you.